What up, everybody? This is another live stream with the Champagne Sharks. I'm Vita Star. Along with me today is our guest, Coach Skip Robinson. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Should I call you Coach or Skip? I don't know. What do the
S-
people call you?
Skip is appropriate.
Skip is appropriate? Okay.
Yeah,
What do the youth call you?
Coach Skip. Most of the time, or Unc, or just basically it. But it's affectionately Coach Skip more than anything. Nobody calls me Coach Robinson or by my government name, which is Edwin. So it's just
Oh, okay.
my mom, family, everybody is Skip.
Skip. Okay. So, Skip, the reason why I wanted you to join me on this is to talk about this is because we were in a Twitter Spaces chat. Spaces is like Clubhouse, but on Twitter. I have an
Hmm.
Android, so I've never been on Clubhouse, but on Twitter, it's
Right,
basically the same concept, right? So
right.
people can use their phone to talk
Hmm.
with other groups of people. One person hosts it, and they, feature some sort of discussion, and everyone joins on that discussion. The discussion topic we were on was dating,
Right,
and somehow I don't know how we ended up talking about it, but I think it had something to do with um, how people get to a space of not being able to talk about their emotions, not being able
right,
to connect with other people. And in that conversation, you brought up the role that you play for a lot of young Black men, young
right,
men in general, but Black men in particular, because that's what our group was talking about. Um, but being there for them as a
hmm,
mentor, supporting them, and the important role that you play in that. So that way, these young people can be able to feel connection, and understand connection and empathy because they're receiving it.
right,
And what you talked about was even though you didn't call it a trauma informed approach, that's pretty much a trauma informed approach.
right.
And what I appreciated most was the way in which you talked about youth. So, if you don't mind telling the guests, I mean not the guests, you are the guest, but telling the listeners and people and the viewers what it is that you do specifically. I know you're a basketball coach, but kind of describe more about that, how you got into it,
Mhm.
and how you see that role in working with youth.
So I've been coaching youth, adolescents, high school, and AAU sports for the last 15 years. How I initially got into it, one of my mentors um, that I've known to help me growing up from, let's say, the age of 9 and to somebody I'm still connected to this day, kind of like gave it to me. Like, this is not a field I pursued. Wasn't something I wrote down and I wanted to do on a daily basis. He kind of basically came to me and said, "It's your turn."
Mm.
And in turn, I took that and ran with it. Um, I've been fortunate to help produce 4 NBA players, over 70 scholarship Division I basketball players, over 10 to 15 NFL guys I've been involved with, over 40 to 50 NFL and college athletes I've been involved with. So it's been a unknown number, but it's been to me a great impact on my community and kids that I encounter on a daily basis. And to me, the biggest success is the kid that goes to school and gets their degree, a 4-year degree with little to no debt, and can start life um, off in a way that they kind of beat the odds or they're ahead of the statistics. So that's what it
Mhm.
is for me. And just if I can just keep a kid off the street and focused on something positive, I feel like I've done my job.
Mhm. See, that's such an underrated role in our communities in
Right,
general, is that someone who's not just the coach, but someone who
right,
mentors them in that process. So you talked about the fact that you had youth that went on to go to the NBA, and go on to play professional sports in
mm,
general. How important is that mental health role in that work? Like how, because I think it's easy for us to see the athleticism, right? If
mm.
you're physically talented, but what kind of mental space is necessary to achieve those types of things for you as the coach and for the youth that are trying to become professionals?
So, like almost anything, if you're not in a good space yourself, how much can you realistically give to someone else? So
Right.
it took for me to have my own business in order, or to be a work in progress where I was able to give back and give my time to something greater than myself. So a lot of what I stand on and what I do is how I was raised. I come from a single parent home. It was just me and my mom and my siblings. So my mom did the best she could with the limited resources that she had. So when I really started to delve into this space, I thought to myself, how could I actually give a kid everything my mom gave me, but with somebody like myself in the picture, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is critical to a young black man or even a young female, just to have an outlet of somebody I can talk to other than my mom, where I'm not judged. It's an open door, and I know this person to take care of me like I'm their own.
How did you learn how to connect with youth in particular? Is that something that's just a natural skill you had, something you developed, something you learned through hard lessons? Were there any particular trainings that you went to that kind of, woke you up a little bit? How did you get to that point?
I grew up in probably two of the roughest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, and I had certain guys in the community that gave me valuable advice and attention that my mother couldn't give me. And what started to happen was when I would get out of pocket, as we say here in Philly, or
Mm-hmm.
started to go astray, my mom would go to these men in the community and have them talk to me. And
Mm,
sometimes these talks would be a different kind of stern, and some of them were just reminders. But as I started to go on to my own journey and go to college and things of that nature, I understand what those conversations meant.
mm-hmm.
Because the one thing a young adult or a young person um, doesn't want to feel is alone. And I
Right.
think my mom did everything she could in her power to make me feel like I wasn't alone. So even if I couldn't go to her, there was a couple individuals I knew I could call or count on that would give me some sound advice and look after me. And it wasn't financial; it was more mental, uh, and it was always reassuring. And it was no filter. They would tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And that's essentially what I try to do for all the young people that I come in contact with and advocate for.
See, there was a couple of you made a couple of points that I definitely want to highlight in what you said. One thing you pointed out, you said not just black boys but black girls too. And I always want to tease that out is because I feel the same way. We do need black men in the community that black girls feel safe with
Right,
and around.
right.
And that's one of the things that helped me growing up. So, and
Hmm.
I've shared this on the show multiple times. I was raised in an abusive household, and by an abusive father, and because of that, I had, even to this day, there are certain issues that I have to deal with, relationship wise or just people wise in general,
Right,
because of that, as a result of that abuse. One of the things that keeps me, I always say, what kept me functional,
right,
what keeps me
right,
functional, um, meaning, my life could have turned out way differently, like, and not in a good way, if it weren't for the mentors I had in my life. And specifically, black male mentors that I had in my life
right,
who made me feel safe when my father didn't make me feel safe.
right.
And that's extremely important because so many times because we don't know where to seek support, or we don't know, or some communities just don't have enough support. Sometimes you get young girls go through what I went through and then just fall into the hands of another man that's dangerous for us, right?
Right, right.
So, but when you have men in the community who are dope, who make us feel safe, who support us, who protect us, that changes, and that sort of support shifts how we think. You know
Right.
what I mean? It shifts how we think about each other as black people. It shifts how we think about black men and black women.
Right.
So those roles are extremely important. The other thing that you said was that your mom went and sought out the mentors for you because she
Right.
understood there was another connection that you needed that she wasn't able to provide. And
That's
there's
exactly
nothing
right.
wrong with that. I think so many times we think that if one parent is missing, that we can't mitigate that with other resources, and we can. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, have come from homes where both parents aren't in the home. I was raised in a single parent household, just like you were,
Right.
and we understand the stresses that our parents went through trying to raise us on their own.
Right.
And so when you have someone as brilliant as your mother who says, let me seek out other people in the community that can support me, that's what it means when we say it takes a village. That's what that
Absolutely.
means.
Absolutely. So there's no, and I tell my kids this all the time, no two paths are the same. How do you get to your destination, and how the person next to you gets to your destination will probably be the road less traveled, or the person next to you may take the easiest path. So one thing for sure and two things for certain, you got to lead by example. One thing my kids always see me do is I practice what I preach.
That's
And
important. See, wait, stop, pause. See, this is what I mean when I say there are people who you didn't go to school to learn trauma informed care. You didn't take one of my
right,
trainings, right?
right, right.
What you just said, I want you to repeat what you just said.
Which part? The
This last point, the very last thing you just said.
what is the last thing that I said? Uh, what is the last? Remind me.
Anything to do with the last thing was you said, but you said something that was really important. Now I forgot. But go ahead, but finish what you were saying. I didn't mean to interrupt.
All right, so
Because you're gonna say it again, I know.
so you have to practice what you preach.
That's what it was.
That the kids have to see you leading by example.
That's okay. So this is what I mean. As basic as that sounds, that's an extremely important element of working with youth and
Right.
teaching youth. Whether you're a parent or a
Mm-hmm.
coach or a trainer or whatever it
Right.
is you do with youth, you run a youth program, whatever it is, the art teacher, it don't fucking matter. Whatever the fuck
Right.
you are, you have to lead by example. There's something called mirror neurons, right?
Okay.
The way I teach this and when I teach a training is I have people partner up, and one person becomes the follower, the other person becomes the leader. And what you do is you stand up and you face each other, and you have to basically mirror what the other person's doing. So the leader comes up with the movements, the follower has to follow. And
Right.
what they find with this exercise is that initially it starts off a little difficult, but the
Mm-hmm.
more you do it, easier it becomes. In fact, you can almost predict what the other person's going to do. So following the way our brains work isn't difficult, is we're naturally
Right.
wired to do that. So
Right.
what happens is young people see us, they mimic what they see. We tell them we should always respect each other, and then they see you cussing people out in the parking lot, right?
Right.
So
Right. Absolutely.
so you can't tell your youth you need to control your temper, and then you out here doing the same thing that you're ready to check them on, because it doesn't work that way. Our brains literally mirror, especially young people. That's what they do. Our brains mirror what the adults around us are doing. That's how we learn what's acceptable and how to function in the societies that we live in. That's why our
That's
brains do
exactly
that.
right. And for me as a coach, I always aim to be fair but consistent.
Yeah,
So
consistency. That's another one. See, you didn't take a training. These are all
so
consistency.
I can't ask. So let's say if I have 10 kids on the team, right? And player one is the best player on the team. I'm going to ask him to do the same thing as I asked player to 10 to do, even though there's different skill levels. So I have to be fair and consistent, because if I set a standard for player one that's not attainable for player 10, I'm a hypocrite, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I lead them into battle or into an intense game where they don't believe what I'm telling them?
Mm-hmm.
If the rules are different from player A just because he's a better athlete, what's the standard?
Exactly.
There's no common ground, and it causes division between the kids.
So again, you are brilliant. You don't realize the natural brilliance that you have, because people miss these little points. People who work with young people, and you've probably seen it.
Right.
You've probably seen other adults do this. They play favorites,
Absolutely.
or they do this thing where they treat different kids differently. And sometimes it might be necessary, But if you do that, you have to explain that. You have to say, well,
Right.
person needs a little extra assistance because they're 2 feet shorter, whatever it is, right?
Right.
But what they do is they treat kids differently. Then that creates discord amongst the young people.
Right. And
And then,
for me,
Mhm.
also, I'll say this, right? So you, I'm not just a basketball coach or training athletes. I'm coming to
Mhm.
parent teacher conferences. I'm checking in with your mom, your grandmom, your uncle, whoever handles the situation, because it's bigger than just the sport. The sport is just a vehicle to obtain some things. But I want to teach life lessons through the game. And the game isn't the sport, the game is life.
Mhm.
Because being a young black male or a young black female in our environments, everything's a chance.
Yep.
When we walk out the door, now more than ever, when you go to school, when you go to the supermarket. So I want my kids to be able to function in all environments. My mom put me in a boarding school for single parent homes here in Philadelphia, right?
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the boarding school was in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, but the school was cornered off by gates and walls. So it's like I got the best of both worlds. When I'm on the other side of this gate, I'm getting educated. I learned how to tie a tie. I wore a blazer every day. I made my bed before I went to school every morning. I had chores when I got back to my dorm. But when I walked outside the gates, I knew how to hold my head high and conduct myself in one of the toughest environments in our city. I want my kids to be able to function like that. I want them to be able to go into a boardroom and be comfortable. But when they're amongst their friends, I want them to feel like they belong. There has to be a balance with the kids.
Right.
They need to know how to function in certain environments and when to be a certain way, because we're always going to be judged. We're always going to be looked at a certain way. So when people don't know me or they hear about me and don't meet me and don't see me face to face, they have no idea who I am.
Right.
And then I walk in at 6'4", 312 pounds. It's like, oh my God, this guy is huge. But at the same time,
Mhm.
I make you feel comfortable around me because I know what I'm talking about. I know how to conduct myself. I'm a gentleman at all times. And I'm a reflection of my mother. As a husband, as a coach, as a son, as a big brother, as an uncle, I'm always a reflection of everything my mom gave me. And I want to
Mhm.
give that to my kids the same way.
See, I think it's important because everything you're saying falls right in line to the things that I think are really important in
Right.
working with you. Um, Being able to be consistent, being a trustworthy person. In fact, I want to share something.
Mm.
Um, let's see. I'm always terrible at sharing things on my screen, but I'm gonna try my best to do this right. So, you guys, you see this
Yes, I see
principle?
it. Right.
So this says principles of trauma informed care. That's what TIC stands for. And a lot of what you talked about, I hear what you're saying. I hear you talk about safety, emotional safety, being that person that they can talk to, being someone that they can connect with. That's safety. It's not just physical safety. And the
Right.
other thing you said, you talked about your presence, your physical presence being one thing, but you never said you toned down who you were. You amplified who you were.
Right.
You didn't say you toned down. That's what people often say. I wanted to make people feel comfortable around me, so I got quieter. I tried to make myself feel smaller. You
Right.
know, but that's not what you said. You said people feel comfortable around me because I'm sincere. I'm honest. I connect.
Right.
I know what I'm talking about. I don't just out here just saying shit, which leads to trustworthiness.
Right.
When you stay consistent, you back up what you say, you follow through with what you say you're going to
Right.
do. That builds trustworthiness.
And to expound on the trustworthiness part of it, I may take my particular team that I'm coaching and our program. We might get on 5 flights a summer from April to August, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the parents can't afford to come and don't come. So I got your kid in Vegas, in California, in Atlanta, and Chicago, and Kansas City, and you know that your kid is safe at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask your child to do nothing I wouldn't ask my own child to do. And a part of
So,
that as well is I started something when I started probably like 8 years ago. When we on the road, I take my kids' cell phones at a certain time at night.
mhm,
So took 10 hours out from game time, my kids don't have their cell phones. So if we play at 8 o'clock in the morning, the captain or the team or one of my assistant coaches has a box, a cell phone box, where we go around and collect the phones. And early on, it was unheard of. Parents didn't
mhm,
understand it. But when their kids started to come home talking about the experience they had with their two roommates, or I didn't even miss my phone.
mm,
They're in there with their guys. I'm looking for them in rooms, and lo and behold, by the third tournament, which is about 2 months later, they're all in a room together until lights out. I don't have to go around and collect the phones. The captain on the team brings the phones to me.
mhm.
So these kids can function at an accelerated amount of time without a cell phone. And
Right.
and also, see, you trick the kids into believing so many things. So you not only have your cell phone, but you're going to get good night's rest. You're going to get up on time. You're going to eat breakfast at a certain time, while the other team may be doing the total opposite. Now we're creating competitive advantages
Mm,
that you can't even believe that matter. Like my teams have, and I'm not a whistle. I don't never toot my own whistle, but since we're having a conversation, I'm gonna be
that's really two two.
forthcoming. We've won over. We've probably been a top five team 4 to 5 last 4 to 5 last years pre-COVID. We've been to 5 national championships. Um, Matter of fact, you're in LA, right?
Yep.
So I have a kid that I coach that plays on the Lakers, and I have one that I coach that plays on the Clippers. They're twins.
Oh.
So I coached them since seventh grade. Marcus Morris plays for the Clippers, and Markeith Morris plays for the Lakers. So these are kids that I've had my hand on since 13, 14 years old that are now professional athletes. So the blueprint is there. You just got to get the kids to believe in it. These kids didn't have anything. When their mother brought them to us, it was I need help. And
Mm,
lo and behold, their mother hit the lottery because she never has to work a day again in her life.
wow. You know, it's
So
a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so for me, I say this all the time. We're breaking the cycle. I want to break the cycle. I want to make that cycle non-existent as much as possible. That same cycle that everybody think our kids get involved in. I want to break that and turn it into something different.
There's something that you said about work about how you make sure the parents are comfortable.
Right.
So you create a sense of safety. So what's interesting is your trauma informed approach isn't just with your youth. It's actually a very holistic approach where even how you make sure the parents feel a sense of safety, feel a sense of trustworthiness, and in that and feeling supported by you because they
Right.
know that you're going to take care of their kids. That's like the most precious thing anyone can give you the opportunity to have care of. It's their child. So
Absolutely.
I heard you talk about that. So let's talk a little bit more about why that is important to you to make sure that the parents feel comfortable.
Because for a long time it was just me and my mom. Me and my younger sister are 17 years apart. So at some point, my mom had to trust individuals to give me rides to practice, to allow me to travel to games with them. My mom doesn't drive a car; she doesn't own a car. So when I was at practice or going to the games, 9 times out of 10, my mother had to work to be able to provide a pair of cleats or a pair of basketball shoes, or to have money for me to go to a tournament or an event. So I understand what needs to happen in order for you to feel comfortable with saying, "Here, Coach Skip, he's yours," right?
Hmm.
But in turn, it ain't going to be, like I said earlier, it's not going to be just about the sport. It's going to be about everything else. When your
Right.
son is acting up, that parent can call me at any time of the night, and we're going to have a talk. Okay, let's say player A is acting up. I don't know what else to do. Okay, so now I'm going to get up. I'm going to take this young man to school. We're going to eat breakfast like civilized people, and we're going to get to the root of the problem, because I build these relationships to where that wall is being broken down. It's already broken down to where I can reach some places that the parents can't.
See, and I think it's more it's more than just it takes a village. It's that it
Right,
takes the right village with the right understanding, like the understanding that you have.
right,
And what's even more beautiful is how you took your experience, what worked, what didn't work, what your mom needed more of, what you needed more of, and
right,
you're taking that and building upon it to create that for the parents coming, for these parents and these youth that you're working with
right,
and you've been working with. I think so many times we underestimate what our skill sets are or underestimate our expertise because we it's not measured on the same measuring tool as, oh, here's your degree in being an expert in working with youth and families,
right,
right? Because I can tell you right now, plenty of people have degrees from universities in all types of stuff. Like my background is working in sociology, social services, things like that. A lot of people have these degrees, they try to work in these fields, and they don't know how to work with people. They don't know
right,
how to connect with people. In fact, they get more upset with people. They get mad at the youth who don't listen to them or don't do what they say. They get mad at the
right,
parents who might not follow the instructions, the way that you laid it, the way you sent in the email. And then they end up just being frustrated and angry and they blame the people that they're supposed to be helping. You, on the other hand, don't even have that approach. You actually take an empathy approach, a
right,
term that a lot of people don't like to use, especially in masculine spaces. But
right,
that's essentially what you did. You're taking your understanding, the feelings of the youth, and being able to connect with that because you know what that feels like. You know what it's
right,
like to put yourself in that position. A lot of people don't know the importance of that in sports or in a lot of competitive activities. They
right,
think it's just about the competitive activity. And like you said, it's beyond sports. Because whether they go on to be pros or not, did you help the youth? Did you help the family?
right.
Is the youth feel good about themselves? Do they feel like they can do anything, whether it's go to the NBA or go to college or start a business, whatever it is?
Mhm.
How do they leave the space when they were with you?
So for me, so every year, except when COVID happened, we would do homeless food drives. I would put a lot of my money up. I would get the parents and other people to kick in, and we would literally, my mom and other parents would help me bag this food up, and we would buy socks, and I would take the kids out, 20, 30 kids. I'll send you some stuff after this over, and we would go feed the homeless. We would walk the city blocks in Philly that are similar to Skid Row here, and we would feed the homeless. I want the kids to understand this is another alternative to what happens. Even if you're not a bad person, this is this is
Go ahead, continue.
an example of how life can come at you quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
my second time of doing this homeless food drive with the kids, I seen somebody that I know,
Mm-hmm.
and this is somebody I didn't even know that was homeless. And I want the kids to see, if you don't do right, if you're having a tough go at life, this could be your alternative. And for them to, after hanging out their third or fourth bag of food or socks, they start to loosen up and see that these people that are out here in these desperate situations are no different than them. That's what I need them to see.
That's a real reality. As a person who was homeless not too long ago, right?
Right,
Like honestly,
right,
homeless.
right,
And I know a lot of people who've been in that. I live in LA. That's not unusual right now. I think they
right,
said like a good number of well, in fact, homeless numbers are increasing, especially since
right,
COVID. Even though they're not supposed to be evicting people, but everybody lives in a place legally, right? So
right,
that's the people don't understand. Um, it's really you're right. It's one of those things that it can happen. They're just like everybody else. It's not a special. I think because we only see people who might be, have mental illnesses or be alcoholics or drug addicts,
right,
and we just assume that's what homelessness is, or that's what a lot of people end up homeless because of all types of circumstances. losing jobs, depression. You know,
Right.
I don't understand. Depression also leads people to homelessness, unchecked depression, not getting the help and services that you need, and the decisions that you make. Being able, I'll put it like this: it's really difficult to get out of a situation like that if you don't have an understanding of how to do that. If you don't
Mhm.
have an understanding of yourself, you don't know how to access the resources, you don't listen to the support around you, if you don't connect with the people around you to get the support that you need, you can end up in a lot of tough circumstances. You
Right.
also, what made it so I was able to get out of that circumstance, I would say fairly quickly. I think I was only homeless for about a year and a half, something like that. Um, I say fairly quickly. Some people say homeless for years, if not forever, right?
Right. Right.
Um, the only reason why I was able to get out of that situation was because I had support and I knew how to get that support. I learned how to navigate certain spaces in the world. You need those skill sets. You have to have those skill sets. So regardless of what happens, you'll be okay. Because what you don't want to do is end up someplace and get stuck. And that's what happens to a lot of people. That doesn't take away the issues around, we live in a capitalist society, a racist class society. We're not
Right.
negating any of that. But we still have to learn how to navigate. That's the part. We still have to have the resources and know how to navigate.
So another aspect of that for me. So this year, everybody kept saying voting was very essential in this year's election from our community. So on
Mm-hmm.
election day, prior to the election, I made sure all my college athletes filled out their absentee ballots. I made
Mm-hmm.
sure all our kids that were 18 and over registered to vote and voted. And not only that, I rented buses, 4 buses, and distressed communities in Philly on election day so people could have transportation to and from the polls.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want transportation to be an excuse in our communities on election day. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the older lady who normally depends on rides or the bus to have a way to get from the polling place to her front door without incident.
Mm-hmm.
So many things were happening in the world. I didn't want, let's say if it snowed on that day or it rained, I didn't want people to not get to the
Get out.
polls because it was because of transportation.
See,
So
that's. I'm sorry. I thought you
no,
were
you
going.
can go ahead. No, you can go ahead.
No. I was gonna highlight that what you're saying goes right along with my tweet that I put up. Um,
Right.
People who I said this tweet for a reason, and funny enough, Safari basically validated what I said on accident, not intentionally, uh,
Right.
but and not in a good way. But I said people who don't do shit in their communities assume others ain't doing shit. All these black groups and orgs that are actively working to address poverty
Mm-hmm.
and crime in our communities, and niggas hop on here, meaning Twitter, and say we don't address black on black violence, which is not true. That first of all, that's a lie.
So
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so for I have a circle of like 5 friends, and out of the 5, I'm the only one that hasn't been shot. Right.
Mm,
So can't nobody talk to me about black on black violence. I lost my godfather and my uncle to a murder suicide with his girlfriends. I lost countless
mm,
friends to violence. The alternative to violence is alternatives. The kids have no alternatives. Not here,
yeah.
not there. What do they turn to? Where's all this outpouring of donations of money? Where's this money going? I don't see any of it coming back into the community. And it's easier for a kid, and I say this wholeheartedly, it's easier for a kid to get a gun than it is a gaming system to take his time, to take his mind off being in the streets.
Mm,
I have nephews that I willingly buy games because that's 5 or 6 hours out of the week that they're not in the streets roaming around.
mm.
Nobody can explain these dynamics to us, but we see all these donations and we see all the money going to all the wrong things. When is it going to go to the right purpose?
So I love that you're pointing that out too, because we've had a whole lot of conversations. I don't know if you've seen the conversation around Black Lives Matter. I don't know your
Right,
position on any of it,
right.
but I just recently learned, and I learned this from the podcast we just did.
Right.
With me and the whole team. So it's four of us. It's me and Mario, T, and Kenny. And we have
Okay.
a podcast episode that's coming out. It's not out now, but it'll be out. It's the next one that's coming out um, around Black Lives Matter. And that's when I learned that they're not even a nonprofit organization. They're not
Absolutely not.
501c3. They're incorporated. So they're a business essentially. And so
A,
all this money
a
got
for profit business.
and all this money got donated, and they don't have to publicly tell us anything because I think they had a fiscal sponsor that was able to make it so they could take donations, but they're not an actual nonprofit. And they had, I think they said since the George Floyd murder, they raised about $90 million.
If you click on the link tree in my bio, the first thing that comes up is, and I didn't want to do it, and the Philadelphia Daily News, the Philly Inquirer, the biggest news production here, had asked me to do a story on what I've done for months. I didn't agree to do the story to January because it's never about me. It's always about everybody else. When my kids get scholarships and stuff, that's a testament to them and a parent. I'm fine with
Mhm.
always being in the background and not getting any attention. But the fact that I can help give a kid hope by showing them what can happen if you take this journey the right way, that's all that matters to me. I don't care if
Mhm.
I'll continue to put my own money out. And I'm in the red a lot of money, but I may never get it back. And I don't care if I do. Because at the end of the day, that's one or two more educated person that look like me, that talk like me, and come from where I come from. I'm no different than any of these kids. So when I see these kids acting crazy on the internet or on YouTube, I want to know who has their hand on them. Who was
Mhm.
there to tell him, you know you messing up, right? Who can call that kid and pull them up to pull them back in?
And not just tell them that they're messing up. So that's the other thing I think a lot of people do is because I know you do beyond that because you have great results. So I know you do
Right,
beyond that. But just for people who don't know, so I think sometimes when we're the expert in things, we don't realize
right,
that everybody don't know. So you know, they don't know. So I'm sort of saying it to them. It's more than just telling them that they're not doing right. It's telling them how to do it right. It's telling them being in space. So if they're being violent because they're angry, okay, when you're angry, it's okay to be angry. But here's what we do when we're angry.
right,
It's okay to be angry, but let's talk about why you're angry. Do you have anybody to even talk to about this?
right,
It's not just, hey, that's bad. Because that's what other thing young people get a lot is everybody tells them like what they're doing is wrong, that they're bad. They start to internalize this belief that something's wrong with them, not that they're struggling with something. That's what it is. They're struggling with understanding something, struggling with communicating something, and they're struggling with processing something.
right,
And we can't just assume that when we see a behavior it's because they just want to do bad or they're just bad people.
right,
They don't know. And there's no one there to support them. So, I want to make sure people know it's beyond just, hey, you're not doing right. It's,
right.
hey, this is what you're doing is harmful. What you're doing is ineffective for what you want to do. What are you really trying to accomplish here? How can we help you accomplish that? Versus what you're doing is wrong, but you see how you are. You're just another bad kid out here in these streets. You can't. It's not that. It's not just waving your finger.
And it goes back to something I said earlier, alternatives. The kids need to know there's a positive and a negative alternative. You out here doing something wrong, the negative alternative is jail, a criminal record, death, or something worse. You could be in a wheelchair. The positive alternative is I came out of that situation unscathed. I can now turn that that lesson into a victory. I know I don't want to be back down that road. And whether people get this message out or not, or tell this part of it, most kids don't want to disappoint their parents.
Thank you. No, 99.9% of kids don't want to disappoint their parents. In fact,
Right.
most of what kids do is to try to get attention, connection, affection, love from
Right.
their parent. Almost everything that they do is for that. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that.
And that's something I learned earlier. My mom worked a lot. So has she come up to school to get me or deal with me? That's something I didn't want to encounter, because not only was I going to get my ass whooped, but two, her being upset with me means I've really messed up. I was more comfortable with doing well. I wasn't a straight A student, but I was good in school. Son, you're doing well. I'm going to work some extra hours this week to try to get you something you really want. That feeling on a scale outweighed me doing something bad to get her attention.
And
And
how
to
much
hear my mother speak about me with elation was a win for me.
and
And
it's
most
more than just the it's funny because even with what you said, I think it was more than it's not the fear of the whooping, it's not the reward that you'll get at the end. It was the connection you had with your mother and how she looked at you that had the biggest impact.
right, absolutely,
And I think that's
absolutely,
really so I even think that's a part that a lot of parents miss. Honestly, they think that it was the fear or the reward, but honestly, it was the connection the whole time that was the biggest thing that your child was looking for. That's why when you get kids, they'll be like, well, "I give my kid everything. I don't understand why they act like this." Because you give them everything, what they except what they actually wanted, which was connection with you, right?
right.
Um, or I don't understand why they're acting like this. I do all the punishment. I do all the things we're supposed to do as a parent. I discipline them. I do all those things. But again, you didn't give them what they really wanted, what they needed, which was connection from you. So
So
go ahead.
so what you we were speaking on the other day on Spaces, the learned behavior is what how I transition the conversation. The learned behavior as a preteen and teen carries over into adulthood and into your your relationships.
Yes, yes,
The things that the kids go through early on in life, whether they know it or not, they're carrying that baggage into their relationship. If you were in a coddled household and you don't know how to adjust, you don't know how to communicate, that's going to affect your everyday relationships, especially
yes,
with a woman.
yes.
If you were abused, and I don't know the statistics on it, I would say seven, 7.5, 8 out of 10, you usually end up abusing your partner at some point
Yes. Or
and
you
your
end
journey.
up or actually, you end up one of the other. You usually end up the abused person or the
Right.
abuser. That's usually what happens.
And these are all, we need to have more uncomfortable conversations in our communities. People
Yes.
don't understand. Like I was telling this to my wife the other day. You click on the TV and you see the notion of pedophilia at its highest point in the world. But there were some uncomfortable things going in our communities where 19, 20-year-old men were messing with 12, 13-year-old women. I mean, young
Yes.
girls.
Girls. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
as a young kid, I just looked at it as she like older men. But that's a sign of pedophilia. That's a
So
sign of a mental gap somewhere.
yeah, I mean, well, this is the other thing. I think, well, there's a couple of things. A lot of things people we didn't know. Let's say, well, we're young, but people didn't know. Let's say 50 years ago around sex and age and all that because people were getting married at 15, 16, right?
Right.
Like that was not uncommon in certain parts of the country, rural areas especially. You got married young. You got married. In fact, if you were 17 as a girl, you might get married off to some 45-year-old widow. That's just the world, how that operated.
Mm.
I think now that we know a little bit more about the science of sexuality and age, that's really a young age to be, having sex, getting
Right.
married, having kids, because your brain isn't even close to fully developed. Like your brain isn't even fully developed for a woman until you're 27, 28, and for men till about 30 to 33. I've even seen studies that say it further than that for
That's the
men.
truth. Yeah, that's the
But
truth.
so we know that now it's not appropriate for a 16-year-old to be sexually active with adults and having, and doing these things. Whereas now even though we're supposed to be more aware of it, I think I think because of that, we've had more conversations about it. But I also agree with what you said. I remember the conversations about girls who were dating older men. I remember I being in middle school and I had friends that were 13 dating guys in college, dating guys in college, right? I remember with guys when I was in high school, there would be grown ass men in their cars sitting outside the school waiting to pick up girls, right? That was not uncommon. Um, the biggest problem I have with the conversations around that is that they blame the girls, they blame the youth. They're fast. They're
Yeah,
over here tempting these men. And the reality is this: if any, and talk to most people, most of us started having crushes on adults when we were in kindergarten. Our first teacher we had a crush on, right?
exactly,
Or
exactly.
or and it's not unusual for hormonal kids whose bodies are changing. They're understanding sex and sexuality. They're
Right.
trying to understand it to see an attractive male teacher or a male in their life that's around or whatever, and they say, "Oh wow, this man is attractive. I want to pursue that." They're young. Is as the adult, you're
Right.
supposed to have the adult brain that says, "No, this is not appropriate. You're a kid. Go hang out with kids your age."
That's exactly right. And uh, at the time, like I said, as a young man, I didn't know that was frowned upon. But as a father, and you know, and someone that works with the youth, that's that's a part of the problem because, like you said, they blame it on the girl, but that male or that older male, that older female, you're preying on like you said, an
Yes.
underdeveloped child.
You're
And
taking advantage of that underdevelopment,
right,
right? Because they don't know shit. Like I talk to people.
right.
I'm in my 30s now. I talk to my cousin who's 24, 25. Sometimes I talk to him and I just want to be like, "Oh my god, shut the fuck up," because you sound crazy. Because they're young and he don't know no better. He just running his mouth.
But not only that, the notion that I know what I know and I know what I don't know, right? So as a 12 or 13-year-old or 14-year-old young lady, what do you really know?
Right. You've been on Earth 13 years. What the hell do you know?
And if you have access to an older man that much time, that means something's going on that the people around you aren't giving you the necessary attention
Facts.
for you to function. But to further expand on it is that what's scary is when when you take that with you, like that those relationships can shape your life, right?
Yes.
What do, what do- what does a 14-year-old and a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old really have in common? What are y'all gonna talk about?
Exactly.
How does that conversation is either all physical or it turns into something light and then turns into physical because y'all don't have nothing in common. You can't ask the young lady or young man, you went to the club or
Right.
have you been
You
here?
can't even meet
Y'all,
up at the bar.
that's what I'm saying. And there you have it. That's
Yeah.
where it gets tricky at. But like I said, to me, uh, just being a black man, just being honest, we have a lot of uncomfortable conversations that need to be had in our communities.
Facts. I 100% agree with that. I think there are a lot of uncomfortable conversations we need to have. I think a lot of times things are scary for Black people when it comes to change. Not just Black people,
Right.
but in particular, I'm talking about Black people. Um, because I think we get so we've internalized a lot of things that we believe to be reality for us, and it's not true.
Right.
For example, I think we believe that we're naturally violent. We believe that about ourselves. Hence why they keep bringing up this black on black violence thing. Black people bringing it up, not white people. Black people, right?
I'll,
We have believed this. I'm sorry.
for me, I, the thing that's interesting in me is, and that's scary for me as well, is we should be a lot more angrier than we are, right?
Facts.
And for the
Facts.
and for the most part, we don't really, as individuals, we don't really look for trouble. Our trouble is from a defensive or scared state. A scared state. The most um, fearful. I've been a person is a scared person because you don't know how they're going to react.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what you see. And that goes to speak on what you see in the policing nowadays. The police are taking these measures because they're scared of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we don't know how they're going to react, because they're naturally scared of us. To where with us is if we don't encounter them, we don't want to be bothered with them.
Right.
How many times you've been in a car or by yourself with somebody and you see the police and you're like, man, I hope they don't mess with us.
Out all the time.
That's
I still worry
because
about that. Yeah.
we naturally don't want to be bothered. We want to go about what we're doing and be left alone.
Right.
But in turn to them, when they encounter us, it turns into fear. But when we encounter them, it turns into we would rather retreat and just leave us alone.
Yeah.
Don't
I agree.
nobody talk about that though. Like what we seen yesterday in Ohio. I don't know the whole backstory, but you walk out your house every day, right? Man, you walk.
Mm-hmm.
How many weapons do you walk out your house with on a daily basis?
Outside of the stuff that I just know how to use as a weapon, not too many.
No, I'm talking about that you put on your person every day, and you know it's a weapon.
Oh, I don't have a weapon like that.
Okay, so cops put their uniform every day on with at least 4 weapons, right? A taser.
Right.
They may have a knife. They may have a shotgun in their trunk, and they may have a handgun. How are you scared of me?
Right. Right. That's true. And they have all types of.
Right. You have known weapons on your person. I have my body. Not only that, you have a protective cocoon and a bulletproof vest on you as well. Why are you scared of me? Nobody want to talk about that. There's no training in the world that is telling them that. You have every measure to stop what's in front of you, but you resort to the highest level of violence? I don't understand that.
I mean, it makes sense if you think about whiteness and what they should be afraid of. They should be afraid of Black people. If you look at all the shit that they've done, you know what I mean? If you look at what they've done to Black people, and I think that's their real fear. What they tell us is because we're violent. They tell us it's because you're a big Black guy. But the reality is that they hate Black people. I mean, and they're afraid that they're gonna get what they deserve. That's what I believe.
But it's a narrative, because when you see Jerome and Pookie have an issue, right? It's their issue between them, right? And I'm not racist or anything like that. But when a person wakes up out of their bed in the morning and loads a bag of guns and say, I'm going to go shoot up a supermarket, who was really violent?
Exactly. Well, it's often not so. I think I told you guys this on the Twitter Spaces thing. So I teach trauma-informed nonviolent parenting, which is a very difficult concept for a lot of my Black families to grasp initially. Right. I often quote Dr. Stacey Patton, who's a Black woman who wrote a book about why whippings are actually where they come from and why we actually do it, and what it has caused and what it causes us, right? It's not this magical solution that we seem to believe it is. And a lot of what we've inherited are traumas that we have now believed are our reality. I think that's who we are. We've internalized traumas and trauma responses and think that those trauma responses are now our identity. So an example would be, you ever remember back? They don't do them as much now, but they used to do these little memes or videos. It was like, laughing about how a Black mom goes off, if you leave a fork in the sink and mom goes off, or she throws the shoe at you because you're talking crazy, or whatever it is. And we laugh, ha ha ha, look at Black moms, ha ha ha, this is so funny, ha ha, my Black mama was just like that, ha ha ha, I'm just like that with my kids, ha ha ha. Not realizing that we're laughing at our mothers have psychotic episodes and trauma responses because the anger that they have does not match the incident.
Right.
Most of the time, not taking the freezer out the kitchen should not warrant, out the freezer should not warrant violence, right? For putting a fork in the sink should not warrant violence. But our mothers get so angry, get so frustrated with everything that they've been through in their lives, in that moment, and you left the fork in the sink or put a fork in the sink after they just washed the whole kitchen,
Right.
now they feel lack of appreciation, they feel frustration, they feel all these things, and the traumas that they've inherited in their lives are now coming out, and we think this shit's funny because it's what our reality has always been. So we normalize this. Black moms are now violent to us, right? We don't even realize the statements that we make. So a lot of times what I hear from a lot of my parents in my classes, they'll say things like, if I don't beat my child, the police will. What people don't realize is that statement is a 100-year old statement of, if I don't beat you, massa will, and massa might kill you. So
I,
we survived. Well, let me just finish this point real quick. We survived that way. We
right.
survived through hitting our children. We survived because if I didn't do it, they might do it and they might kill you. So I have to, you have to listen to me. If you don't listen to me, this could be your life. So this has been our survival. This has been our survival. So much so where now we've told ourselves that's the black way to parent. And I've had people shut me down and say, no, 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 I parent the black way. I parent the black way. The black way is not violence. We've been taught that. We've internalized that. We passed that down and we said, this is the way that you're supposed to parent. This is the way we're supposed to treat each other. Then we wonder, now we have all these studies that
Mm-hmm.
come out that show doing a lot of these things to our children in the ways that we've been doing them cause more health problems in them later on in life.
Right.
There's something called the ACEs studies that talks about that, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. We're finding out that it causes neurological damage. So you beating your child because they don't have good grades makes their grades worse. Things like
Right.
that. But we've internalized this is who we are. We're the violent ones. We're the violent people, and we have to somehow accept that that's who we are.
For me, I don't. So for me, it got to a point to where my mom didn't have to put her hands on me. I just understood what was expected of me. Like you get to a point, it's like trained behavior, like X plus Y equals Z, right? But in order to get the Z, you got to do Y. So I'm just going to not do it. So I think that's the black parenting. You give your kids examples of what not to do in order for them to stay away from it. If you got to consistently um, punish your child or discipline your child over the same things, that's it's something wrong there.
Right. That means that something's that means that the solution you think you have is not to, you don't even know what the problem is. That's usually what I think. Because you think you have the problem most people have in general is we come up with solutions when we don't know what the problem is.
Right.
So when we don't understand the problem, we think, oh, the problem is my child just don't want to listen. My child just wants to be bad. So that's the problem.
Right.
And here's my solution to that problem. But we never think, well, why is my child making this decision over and over again? What is it
Right.
that they're not understanding? What is it that they need that they're trying to do that I'm missing? So I can come up with a more effective way to change the behavior. What I teach is something called redirection. So once you can figure out what that problem is, you can redirect them to get whatever to figure
Right.
out, So maybe in their mind, they're not doing anything wrong, or they feel like they have to do whatever it is to get done what they need to get done. But if that's not the way to do it, show them the right way to do it. Hey, you don't get my attention by, drawing on the wall or, screaming and hollering or whatever it is. That's not how we get my attention. If you want my attention,
Right.
I'll make an effort to pay more attention and you can get my attention doing these things. So from now on, when you want to get my attention, this is what you do. Screaming at me is not the way to do it. And then you can teach them that.
Kids are kids and pets are the biggest sponges in the world, right?
Mm,
You can ultimately teach a kid or a pet and train him to do anything, right? That's a reflection of time, patience, message, and communication. The more time you put into something, the better results, in my opinion.
mm-hmm,
That's what's worked for me as a coach.
mm,
You can't just roll a basketball out and say, go dunk the ball. There's progression over time. You got to
right.
let the kids see the results. You got to let them understand the pattern of behavior. And again, I feel like the things we teach as coaches apply to everyday lives, right?
That.
If you get 5 fouls in a basketball game, you're eliminated from the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can be applied in life. If you get arrested 5 times, something bad's going to happen.
Right.
But at the same time, you teach your kid about commitment, being a practice on time. With me, early is on time is late, and late is you shouldn't show up. These are all the things you can apply to your daily lives. I need to be on time. I need to respect other people's time. I need to commit to what I'm coming here to do, and I need to be productive while I'm here. And one of the things I overly emphasize with the kids when I first get them is I don't expect you to be perfect. I want to see progression over time. For example, I had a kid who was just at Virginia Commonwealth University. When I got him in ninth grade, before we played basketball, we would get on the track with our strength and conditioning coach, who's one of my best friends, like a brother to me. And this kid hated it. He would hide in the bathroom. He would show up late just so he didn't have to run on the track. And lo and behold, a few days ago, this kid declared for the NBA draft and runs 5 miles every day by himself. Go figure.
Mm. Wow.
So you can't tell me if given kids rules and regulations and setting precedents, they won't follow it. But you also got to see it through. You got to be, like I said earlier, you got to be fair and consistent.
And you got to support them through that. That's the other thing you said. You didn't just, like you said, you don't just roll out the basketball. You don't just have a set of rules. You actually help them through that. You help them, you support them. Okay, you got to get up and run. Let me help you do that. Let me help you get your butt up and get out there and run. Whatever it is you have, whatever that process looks like. I don't know for sure. But it doesn't sound like you just say, okay, here are the rules, now follow them. Oh, you didn't follow the rules, you're out of here. Doesn't sound like that's your approach.
And then when it's off the court, I'm taking every step. We're eating together as a family. I can easily go to Ruth's Chris on the road or Red Lobster and eat by myself. But if I got enough money for all of us to go to Wendy's or Chick-fil-A, that's what it is. I'm no better than them. Even though I worked hard for my money, I want them to understand we're in this together. I want my kids to make lifelong relationships and connections. I want them to love one another. I want them to support each other when they're at their respective schools during the school year and they're not with me in the summertime. And that's the bond I created. It's way deeper than basketball. It's way deeper than any sport. It gets back to me that it comes back to life and giving these kids an opportunity to see positive reinforcements, to understand alternatives, to understand conflict resolution, to be able to mediate between their peers. These are all the things that have been lost with today's youth. There's no conflict resolution. They don't know how to get ahead of something before it gets bad. They don't have their own friends pulling them up and telling them that's wrong. You know you shouldn't do that because Coach Skip's going to say X, Y, and Z. These are all the things that we need to bring back into our communities in order for our young people to get back on track and be successful.
Yeah, the conflict resolution thing is really an interesting point too, because again, you giving them an example of what empathy looks like. That's how conflict resolution comes about, right? So conflict is inevitable. That's the thing. We're different people. We have different needs at different times, some more intense than others, right? I want my needs met, you want your needs met. And so sometimes it feels like those needs are in conflict. What I often teach, for example, is that the needs are never in conflict. It's the strategies to get those needs met that are often in conflict.
So, and then it's having alternatives, like I said earlier. So I had a kid who wouldn't behave his ninth grade year. I tried making him run the whole practice, making him run stadium steps, do push-ups, telling him he couldn't go to practice. And finally, I said, you know what? I got something for him. I made the whole team run because of his transgressions. And never again, he got in any trouble. We ran for an hour, everybody.
That peer pressure.
I told the kids, you're running because your teammate can't behave in school. But we didn't do it. No, it's one for all. So if he can't act right, that means we not going to practice. And that kid's going to graduate college next year. So it's just different alternatives to give the kids to have something for them to refer back to that makes them say, I'm not going to take that path today. I'm gonna go sit my ass down because I know what the end result going to be.
I like the pivot. I like how you pivoted. When you saw what wasn't working, instead of just trying to do the same thing that didn't work, you said, okay, I can, and I have a feeling, because you made it succinct, but I have a feeling you noticed that peer pressure probably would work with this kid. That's
Absolutely.
my guess.
Because again, it's one thing to hear it from me. It's another thing to hear it from your peers.
True. And I think the fact that you were like, okay, I see peer pressure works with this kid. I see this kid wants to be liked by his teammates. So if he's going to have to understand that if you're on a team, you represent the team. So if you out here not acting right, the whole team suffers. And here's an example of that.
Right. And also I've learned not change my message between the kids, but to change my tone sometimes. I can say one thing, I can say the same message to one kid and a higher tone of voice with more sternness than the other kid. I can't, but the message can be totally the same. If I yell at one kid with this message, he may shut down on me. But if I yell at the other kid, he's going to respond instantly. So you have to be versatile and how you discipline and how you interact, because the message can truly always be the same, but the tone can measure how it's receptive and how it's received.
It's kind of like it's like I often talk about, like, sometimes we have conversations about, let's say, like empathy, right?
Right.
And people they start going far off on the deep end. They start talking about, just letting people do whatever the fuck they want. And
Right.
that's not what empathy is. Empathy also comes with boundaries. Empathy is never absent of boundaries, right?
Right.
And boundaries aren't absent of empathy, right? Because I love you, but you're going to have to learn how this is where it stops. We're not doing this, right? And if you love me, you'll respect that. And if you don't, you'll move the fuck on, right?
That's a fact.
It's the same thing with consistency. Consistency is not absent of flexibility, and flexibility is not absent of consistency. You have to be flexible in the sense that, like you said, some youth respond when you're loud and boisterous, and you go on over. Like, I work with kids all the time. I've been working with kids for about 20 years. And I always say I worked with kids for 20 years. I'm younger than I look, but I think I look old now. But I just say that. I worked with kids for about 20 years
Right.
now. And the thing that I found is, one, I can use my own communication style. I always notice the people who come to work with the youth in the hood and start trying to talk like hood youth, and that's not you. I hate that shit. So I use the way I communicate. I am empathetic. I'm very affectionate, but I'm not one of these like the white teachers that come in with that shit. They would do this shit like, oh my God, Johnny, it's just peaceful. And I've never been that person. I'm just myself, right? But the other thing is, I realize the kid that I'm talking to. If I'm talking to a kid who responds more, guess some kids, they love it when you clown. You gotta talk shit. Girl, what you like? I have one kid, she was really funny. She would do something, she knew she wasn't supposed to do. Kids, they get hyper, they want to do some shit like jump off or something, right?
Right.
I think we were in a classroom and she climbed up on top of a chair to declare herself queen or something. Something like that.
Right. I understand that.
It was elementary school. So she's like, like she's like 9 or something. So, and she's being disruptive and all these things. So I just started looking around the room, and she starts looking at me crazy. I'm looking at her. I'm looking under her. I said, "Move your foot up." Look under her foot. I started doing these. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm looking for your mind because you clearly lost it right now." And she starts laughing, and she hops down off the chair. She not hops down, but she gets down off the chair. She's like, "I'm sorry, Miss Bonnie." That's what the kids would call Miss Bonnie. "I'm sorry, Miss Bonnie," and they would go on. Now, you got some kids, you start clowning them, they get embarrassed and humiliated. They shut down on you, or you hurt their feelings. You have some kids, you can talk funny. You say, "Girl, what kind of shoes you got on today?" You can do that. You can't do that with some kids. So you have to be flexible. I'm consistent in that I treat all the kids equally, but I'm flexible in that my communication and the way that I connect with them might be different.
That's absolutely right, and that's a large part of it. It goes back to being fair, consistent, and flexible. So It is what it is. Like, I know I can't save everybody, but my goal is to merely give them an alternative, right?
Yes.
Every kid's not going to make the NBA. Every kid may not play college basketball, but hey, I went to college for logistics. Like, you taught me some stuff, and this conversation that I didn't even know I was talking or speaking on a professional level. Most of it's common sense. A lot of it's experience, and the last part of it is having empathy and sympathy and compassion.
Yes. Yes.
I walked these streets before. Like, we always say as adults, oh, y'all don't never think we were your age before. That's real. Like, we've walked these streets. We've been in these circumstances. You guys just are in a microwave generation to where y'all have easy access to stuff. And I talk straight up with my kids. I
Mm-hmm.
I probably give them their first bag of condoms, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I tell them straight up. I used to have to go on my uncle military trunk locker and steal his Playboys, whatever was in there. Y'all can literally hit Google and find what y'all looking for. So if y'all gonna have microwave abilities to get the stuff, I'm accelerate my teaching. I'm accelerated to the point that equals how y'all can access it. Oh, y'all think it's a game? Okay, let's go to the morgue and find out. Oh, you think it's a game? I'm gonna have one of my CO friends come and talk to you. One of my police officer friends come talk to you. Oh, I know a couple funeral directors. You know how many people they bury on the daily right now?
Mm-hmm.
The alternative, it can be measured in negative and positive, however you want to do it. But one thing's for sure, they got funeral suits in your size, they got jail jumpers in your size, and they got graduation caps and gowns in your size. Choose one, because they made them for everybody. The path you choose to walk in, it can usually decide which one of them you're gonna wear. You either gonna be in that casket, you either gonna be in that cap and gown, or you're gonna have a degree from a technical position, or you may be a cosmetologist, or they got that gel jumpsuit. Which side of this you want to be on?
And it's interesting because on one hand you're showing the alternatives in some pretty scary space, but at the same time it pretty much promotes what you're doing. And I mean
Right,
promotes, like, yeah, this is what you're headed towards. But if you rock with me, look at all the fun we're having over here.
right.
Look at how safe you are with us here versus running in the streets. Look at the places you get to travel to, the things you get to see versus this. And this doesn't have to be your world. Like this, and what's interesting also, a lot of those young people, that's probably what they see anyway. They never had anybody show it to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
I take great pleasure in taking a kid on his first flight,
mm,
arriving in Texas or California or Vegas, seeing the lights, being able to walk around without a care in the world because you're not in your hood. I take great measure in giving a kid 3 or 4 pairs of free sneaks, so he don't gotta go to his mom and say, "Mom, I don't have nothing to play basketball in." I take great pleasure in going see that kid play during the school year with his high school to let him know I'm here 24/7. I ain't going nowhere, so you got to deal with me. So either
mm-hmm,
you're gonna deal with me, we're gonna either make it the easy way or the hard way. And I'm not above none of my kids. I love on them. I know when to put my arm around them. I know when to put my fists in their chest as well.
mm,
And more than anything, the competitors and the referees will say, not only do they play the right way, but they're great kids. They don't talk. They're not going to talk back. They're not going to talk to the referees. They're going to be very mannered. They're going to have great manners. They're going to show great sportsmanship, but they're going to compete at the highest level. That's what life is about, whether you know it or not. When you wake up and you go to do your job, you need to compete at the highest level. On the contrary, it might not always work, but you want to compete at the highest level to get your job done. You never know. I'm gonna give you an example. So we went to uh, a tournament probably in like 2008, and Alex Rodriguez, the guy who just bought the baseball, the famous baseball player who just bought the Minnesota Timberwolves and I believe their baseball team. His quote in this banquet was, "You always perform like it's your last time because you never know who's watching for the first time.
Mm.
You never know. That person that can change your life can be in that audience. So you treat and respect everything like it can be taken away from you at any given time. Because if you treat it that way, you might create an opportunity you didn't even know existed."
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. I love that.
So you just give the kids endless examples of the right way and the wrong way. Like we talked about earlier, fear can even cause you to go the right way or the wrong way. And I'm not going to save every kid, but the goal is to give these kids opportunities to change their lives, to change the statistics, to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
See, I even in the right way, the wrong way, I don't even use those terms anymore, like good and bad, right and wrong. The reason why
Right,
I don't is because it doesn't. I know what you mean, and we know what you mean.
right,
Um, but sometimes when I'm speaking, the reason why I say from those particular terms because I want to be more specific than that, right? Because sometimes wrong and right is very subjective depending on what you're talking about, right?
exactly. You're
So,
absolutely right.
is it wrong to hit somebody? It may or may not be, depending on the circumstance,
Right,
depending on who's in the story, what happened. And for some people, you should never hit anybody. For other people, you should always defend yourself. So those things are very subjective. I always say what was effective versus ineffective. Was it
right,
harmful or hurtful versus helpful? Right? So did it help you achieve what you wanted to? Did you get the results that you wanted to? Most of the time they don't. Is this what you wanted? You wanted your mother
right,
crying here in the office with us right now? Is that what you wanted? Did you want to not graduate and not get in, and
right,
see your peers walk across that stage when you don't? Did you know? So clearly, the whatever it is you're doing or have been doing hasn't been effective towards what you
right,
want. So what do you want?
right,
And if your goal was to, if you're like even work, I know they had kids who would cuss out their teachers, right? Not that the teachers didn't sometimes deserve it. Cause no, I'd be like 2 seconds to cuss some teachers out my damn self,
right,
but there's still an effective way and an ineffective way. So I would talk to the youth and I would say, okay, it's not that I think you were necessarily wrong for speaking up for yourself, but was the way that you did it effective for what you were trying to do? What did you get out of it? What
right,
ended up happening as a result of? And then when they tell me that it wasn't what they wanted to happen, okay, what would you have rather had happen? Then they say, well, I wanted my teacher to listen to me. And if she wasn't going to listen, then give me another option to do whatever. I said, okay, did you say that? No. Okay. So however you were trying to communicate, what you communicated was very ineffective.
right,
Even when I'm not saying there's anything wrong with saying the words wrong or right or good or bad, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying for me, when I'm trying to be very specific, I just say things like, is this helping you? Is it harming you? Is it helping others? Is it harming others? Is it effective? Is it ineffective? Because then people can, and I've learned that from, I took a class around nonviolent communication.
mm,
I never thought about that when working with kids, so I started studying that. And they were saying how we tell kids things like go to school and be good. What the hell does that fucking mean?
right,
Be good. Okay, sure, I'll be good. Do you mean listen to the teacher? Do you mean do all your assignments? Do you mean play well with your friends so everybody's happy? What does that exactly mean? So I just started learning how to be even more effective. I know that's what you're saying because when you say wrong and right, you have it contextualized. So we're just
right.
talking show. I
Absolutely.
know when you're talking to the youth, it's not you're doing wrong, you're doing right.
No, absolutely.
I just
It's
want I don't want you to think I was like
no,
unaware
no,
of
no.
that. I'm aware
All
of that.
good. No, all good. All good. Definitely all good.
I know we're gonna wrap. So I know you got some coaching to do tonight because you are a hardworking man who you're flexible, clearly flexible with the time because you make sure that you can get to you, and I appreciate that. They do too.
it's
Uh,
it's my days are crazy, but like I said, organized chaos. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Love it. So you also have a sports podcast. So
Mm,
I have not heard his podcast, so I cannot say his takes are cool or great, or because I don't know what the fuck he's saying on there. So if he says some fuck shit, that's on him. But
Nah, it's my podcast is essentially I bring guests on and fields and I allow them to tell their story. So, like I brought my guys on that I told you that play for the Lakers and the Clippers. I bring college coaches. I brought Dawn Stelly on, who's probably the most influential black women coaches in the world. I've had a couple players from the NFL on there. I've had curators, guys that are working in the industry that design sneakers for athletes that do videos and photography for the NBA and the NFL. So just to give people um, an insight onto different walks of lives and just to hear people's stories. It's some crazy stories that are probably untold or unheard, but it's things that people need to know because, like I said earlier, no two paths are the same. And your story and my story might be different, but you would be surprised how they can relate to each other.
see, I love that you have a podcast like that because it's again clearly the way you think, and I should have just known this. You go beyond just the sport. You go beyond just
Right.
the athleticism. You take it to a deeper, more important place, and I think that is beautiful. I think it's wonderful. It's called I Got a Story to Tell podcast. It's available on anywhere you get your podcast, including where you get Champagne Sharks podcast. So you can find his podcast right there. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button when you get there and support and make sure that you are supporting and sharing what you listen to. If it's dope, please share. We want to make sure that people know that there are black men doing great work, having great conversations, and let's promote people that are doing dope shit instead of complaining about people that aren't. Like we complain about all these other podcasts and platforms that are trash and they do this, and they do that. So promote what you love, promote what's dope, promote some shit that's talking about shit, not gossipy shit. If that ain't,
Yeah, no clickbait. You're gonna get some real stories. I'm not doing anything. I'm pretty sure that's probably why I don't have a lot of followers and likes because it's nothing gimmicky. It's just real. It's just
now, you
100%
don't got
real all the
followers in
time.
life because them niggas ain't doing their job. Your job as a fan and a listener is to do.
I got
Make
you.
sure you share and promote his stuff. Okay. So make sure I'm gonna go on my all my podcast listening apps. I don't like to promote any because they ain't paying me. So go to your podcast and when you and subscribe to I Got a Story to Tell podcast. You hear how he was talking on here. You see that he does have a lot of shit to say. He has dope shit to say. And I love the fact that he's highlighting the work of other people who are also doing dope shit. So thank you so much for joining us, Coach Skip Robinson.
Nah, thank you for having me. I usually don't have this much time, but when you ask me to do it, I mean, if I could just shed light on anything and continue to be, I always say, I'm just trying to be a beacon of light and just drive and just change things for people and create different lanes. That's all I want to do.
I love it. And I want to have you on again. So, and also want to do a podcast with you, not just a live stream.
Right.
So that way we can, again, promote your podcast, but also talk about some of these things even more in depth because I can already tell there's so much more you have to say. So thank you again. And
Right.
where can people find you other than your podcast? Where can people find you?
So on Instagram, it's that's bad. I don't even like talking about myself. On Facebook, it's Skip Robinson. On Instagram, that's a shame. I don't even know this stuff. On on Instagram, it's just Coach Skip with an underscore, and on Twitter, it's Coach Skip B-ball. So listen, you'll find more interesting stuff about people that I know on there than you will about me. But a lot of the stuff people can take and use the information that I'm giving. And I'll send you some stuff once we get off here for you to look over and so you can get a better glimpse into the things I've done. So when we collaborate the next time, and you'll be like, you kind of being modest. So
You are being modest. I don't even doubt that a little bit. So I did go through your link tree and there's a lot of shit. And I said, he got too much shit. So let me just talk to him when I get there.
Nah, some of it, you know what? and this is for me, like, once we started engaging, I'm a research freak. I look up anybody. I just, because you want to know. You just never know how you connected to someone. And life is too short to miss out on connections.
Facts. I love it. And also, like I said, I heard you in that group. I have a really good ear and eye for dope people. I can't explain what it is. It might be my superpower from trauma. I was talking about not only do we have trauma responses that are negative and bad, but we also have superpowers that come out of our traumas. The things that actually help us in life moving forward. And one of those things I think have helped me moving forward in life is being able to identify dope people so I can connect with them. So when I see somebody dope, automatically are doing some dope work or talking about some dope shit, my first thought is how do we highlight it so others can see it, replicate it, and know it exists. So I'm tired of niggas saying shit ain't happening. Nobody cares about the youth. Ain't nobody doing nothing in our community. Black on black crime. They always say all this dumb shit, but not talking about the work that people are actually already doing in their communities right now.
And to just be honest, I'm so passionate about the stuff that I believe in. I support other people. So in my coaching bag, I carry around books of Black authors that I try to read in my downtime because, like I said, I want to know more about just
you got to put it in
I just want to know more about people. I want to know people's journeys. I want to get a better understanding of what's going on in our communities from men and women. So, and this guy right here, Jerome Allen, he's an NBA coach with the Boston Celtics and got indicted by the FBI while he was working in the NBA. So this story is amazing. Of course, everybody know who Wallow is. He's from Philly, and this is somebody that has a great story. Then this is a guy that been homeless and now works for Nike. So it's all different walks of life. If you take time out of your day to get to know people and hear their story, and that's what the podcast is based off.
I was about to say, it sounds like that's what your podcast is. It's exactly what your podcast is.
And these guys have been guests. So, if you can't get nothing from me, you just do your homework on these people.
I love it. Thank you so much again for joining us. I know you have limited time, and I appreciate you for sharing it with us here on Champagne Sharks. Again, if you guys want to follow him, go to Twitter, Coach Skip B-Ball on Twitter. His Instagram was Skip Robinson, you said?
No, Coach Skip _.
Oh, Coach Skip _ on Instagram. And make sure you check out I Got a Story to Tell podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, because I Googled it, so it's on all of them. I already checked. So make sure you check that out. For all of our Champagne Shark fans and listeners and followers, make sure that you support. You can hit us up on Patreon, become a Patreon subscriber. Once you become a patron, you get access to full episodes of our podcast, as well as a lot of old podcasts. Right now, you guys only get half of it if you don't become a patron. If you become a patron, you get the other half. So, and our conversations are always fire.
And
yes, go ahead.
Not to cut you off, the first person or the first 3 people that follow every media outlet and DM you or let you know, I'm going to send a hoodie, a book, and a mask.
Oh shit! Okay. So you get a hoodie, a book, and a mask if you subscribe to all of your accounts?
Yeah, as well. Okay. And they let you know that they did it, or they reach out to me and say, I heard you on Champagne Sharks. I'm going to send them a hoodie with a podcast hoodie. I'm going to send them a podcast mask, and I'm going to send them one of these books.
I love that. So hoodie, mask, and a book.
Matter of fact, and the fifth person, I'm gonna send them all 4 books, a hoodie and a mask, and you get to pick the winner.
Oh shit! Okay, sounds like a plan to me. All right, so this is what we'll do. We'll list all of them on our Champagne Sharks Twitter, and in that way, people can make sure that they follow all of them. So if you go to our Champagne Sharks Twitter, just go to Champagne Sharks on Twitter, and you'll get a free hoodie, podcast, a mask for the first 3. And if, right. In a book, if you're the first 3, if you're in the top 4, you get
everything.
Get everything and all the books.
And for the fifth person, because I'm sponsored by Body Armor, I'll send you a hoodie and a case of Body Armor.
What? Okay. So it's a lot. This is a lot. Okay. So this is a lot. Okay. So I want to put it all on our Twitter. Skip, do me a favor and list all the social media and the prizes, and I'll make sure and put it on our social media so that way people can find it all in one place and be fast about it. Okay.
I got you.
Thank you again so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Make sure again that you support. Not only support, like, subscribe, and share us. Like and subscribe, like, subscribe, and share Coach Skip Robinson's podcast and his work, and you'll be doing a wonderful thing of promoting the things that are dope, not just complaining about the shit that's trash. Because I get tired of y'all whining when there's all this dope shit out here.
Right,
so
absolutely.
You can also support us on Champagne Sharks. You can support us on Venmo. You can hit us up on CashApp at Champagne Sharks or # Champagne Sharks. Also on PayPal, champagnesharks@gmail.com. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can also hit that email. You want some advice, you want me and Kenny to, clown you, whatever you want, just go ahead and send us an email, champagnesharks@gmail.com. If you go to champagnesharks.com, everything will be right there. So looking forward to promoting Coach Skip Robinson's social media so you can guys get these prizes. And you guys have a great rest of your evening.